Whose signature is it? Hoffinger asks repeatedly. Donald J. Trump, Cohen says each time. Michael Cohen is currently testifying inside the Manhattan courtroom and laying out exactly how he forged false invoices for Donald Trump. And we'll get to that. But first, early this morning, we saw Donald Trump continue to test the limits of his gag order on Truth Social. He made a post saying, virtually every legal analyst and scholar said yesterday at the end of the day that there is no case and that this witch hunt should have never been brought and should be thrown out now, triple exclamation point. Why wasn't this hoax brought 7 years ago instead of in the middle of my winning campaign for president, election interference? This is where he really tests the limits of his gag order. He says, the problem is that this judge, Merchan, is totally compromised, conflicted, and corrupt, making big money off of this scam and its outcome. Trump then claims he can't render a fair decision. Too much is at stake for him and the Democrats. The appellate division should remove him immediately. Again, I want to ask, who are all of these legal scholars that you're citing? Are you talking about Alina Habba? Are you talking about Rudy Giuliani, who's going through a RICO case of his own? Are you talking about John Eastman, who's about to be disbarred for trying to interfere with the results of the 2020 election? This post reads, Trump then attacked Judge Merchan as compromised, conflicted, and corrupt, making big money off this scam and its outcome. Trump has been using the compromised, conflicted, and corrupt line in past posts to allude to Judge Merchan's daughter, who Trump believes is profiting off the case, with no proof whatsoever. Trump also attacked Judge Merchan as profiting off his case and its outcome. That's a huge attack in and of itself, but what Trump is doing is alluding to his previous attacks claiming Judge Merchan's daughter is profiting off this case. And Trump has found creative, slippery ways to test the limits of this gag order in ways that no one else really can because of his network of MAGA allies. For example, if you watched my video yesterday, I showed that he had the MAGA Avengers behind him, people like Tommy Tuberville, people like J.D. Vance, and Alina Habba with him in court. And about halfway through the day, they walked outside and started talking to the media, and they were essentially breaking Donald Trump's gag order for him. They were talking about Judge Merchan's daughter. They were talking about the witnesses. They even implied that the jury may not be full of real Americans. So Donald Trump has this, again, slippery, creative way of testing the limits of these gag orders. But to move on to what's going on right now, today Trump is joined by people like Vivek Ramaswamy and even Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. But as Michael Cohen walked into the courtroom to take a stand, Trump was chatting with his lawyer Todd Blanche as Cohen entered and appeared to avoid making eye contact. Cohen then admitted he created false invoices. Cohen is now recounting how, when he was asked by Jeff McConney for invoices, he actually didn't have a copy of the document made with Weisselberg. It would have been on a retainer agreement, but there was none, Cohen told prosecutors. As a result, Cohen explained, he created a document and called it an invoice, requesting payment for services rendered for the months of January and February from Weisselberg. He continued to send such documents as monthly invoices. Asked by prosecutors about whether services had actually been rendered, Cohen replied, "No, ma'am." Asked whether for services rendered was a truthful statement, Cohen repeated, "No, ma'am." The true purpose, Cohen explained, the reimbursement of hush money. Cohen said yes when asked whether the invoice was a false record and whether each invoice made the same false representation. There it is right there. Donald Trump is facing 34 counts of falsified business records, and Michael Cohen just handed the prosecution what they need on a silver platter. And this part is incredibly important. Cohen is repeatedly reading through the description on each check stub, and Hoffinger repeatedly asks him if the description on the check is false, which he affirms. She then asks if he recognizes the thick slashing signature on the check, which he also affirms. Whose signature is it? Hoffinger asks repeatedly. Donald J. Trump, Cohen says each time. NBC adds their own analysis. Cohen's testimony today is slow going but legally important. The jury has already seen his invoices and checks, but now the prosecution has him directly confirming each of the alleged false statements on the record. It's anticipated that Trump's defense will argue that the statements weren't false because Cohen was acting as his lawyer at the time. The jury is showing no emotion to this evidence and testimony. On screen right now is a copy of a check stub paid to Cohen that was admitted into evidence. Cohen is subdued and polite as he reads the invoices and confirms under oath that each one contains false statements. He continues to provide a simple answer, yes, ma'am. Cohen said during the 15 months he was personal counsel to Trump, his goal was to protect and lie for him. Did you continue to try to protect him? Prosecutor Hoffinger asked. Yes, ma'am, Cohen replied. Did you continue to lie for him? Hoffinger asked. Yes, Cohen replied. Why did you do that? Hoffinger asked. Out of loyalty and in order to protect him. I touched on this yesterday, but it really feels like everybody who ends up in Donald Trump's orbit, or everybody who works for Donald Trump, ends up modeling his behavior and ends up picking up his worst characteristics. They turn into liars and they turn into bullies when doing business. We even see this with Republicans in Congress. Nobody called each other nicknames. Nobody was this vile towards the other side until Donald Trump came and introduced his style of politics into the Republican Party. A perfect example is what just happened right now. Speaker Johnson calls this hush money trial politically motivated and election interference. Speaking to reporters outside the courtroom, House Speaker Mike Johnson, who was in attendance for today's court proceedings, slammed the hush money trial as a travesty of justice and politically motivated, and said that Trump's required attendance is an intentional effort by Democrats to keep him off the campaign trail. How many times do I have to say this? Democrats are not the one who brought this case. He was indicted by a grand jury of his peers in Manhattan, who went through the evidence and decided that these charges are worth bringing.
What we've got here is a partisan Democrat district attorney. We have a Biden donor judge, and we have an assistant DA who was recently a top official at the Department of Justice, Biden's DOJ, and recently received over $10,000 in payments from the Democratic National Committee. And meanwhile, among the atrocities here, the judge's own daughter is making millions of dollars doing online fundraising for Democrats.
And there we see, clear as day, another Trump ally, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, attacking Judge Juan Merchan's daughter and effectively breaking Donald Trump's gag order for him since Trump can't do it. Chidi on Twitter said, "This is the ultimate loyalty test, lying for a criminal con man and being used as a pawn to bypass Trump's gag order." While Speaker of the House Mike Johnson was giving interviews outside the courtroom, things continued to heat up inside the courtroom as we learned that Michael Cohen made $4 million based on his title under Trump. The prosecution pushed Cohen on whether having the title personal attorney to the president helped Cohen attract other clients, to which Cohen said he had earned about $4 million from new clients. At the same moment, the New York appeals court rejected Trump's gag order appeal. And when asked why he lied to Congress, Cohen said he did it in order to protect Mr. Trump, which is a phrase that we see being repeated over and over by Michael Cohen. NBC gives their own analysis by saying Cohen's buzzwords today: to protect Mr. Trump and to stay on message. At least 5 times during today's testimony, Cohen has responded to questions about his actions and why he did them with the same reply: in order to protect Mr. Trump. At least twice he has replied with to stay on message. The prosecutor then showed Cohen's text pressuring Stormy Daniels' lawyer to have her deny Trump affair. The DA's office entered into evidence texts between Stormy Daniels' lawyer Keith Davidson and Michael Cohen, in which Cohen told Davidson to call him. Davidson indicated that Stormy Daniels was supposed to fly to Los Angeles the next day. "Can you call me, please?" Cohen said. "Please call me." "Anything?" "Still trying," Davidson wrote back. Cohen then wrote, "This is no good. The wise men all believe the story is dying and don't think it's smart for her to do any interviews," Cohen said. "Let her do her thing, but no interviews." 100% Davidson texted back. Cohen said he continued to press Keith Davidson for another statement from Stormy Daniels denying her affair with Trump amid increased media attention around the story, despite knowing it was false. Asked how he knew the statement was false, Cohen said, "Because I helped him craft it." Pressed on how he knows Daniels was paid hush money, Cohen similarly commented, "Because I'm the one who paid it." And finally, Trump's eyes are closed as Cohen continues testimony. Trump's eyes are closed and his head is tilted to the right as Cohen answers questions about how he scrambled to react to the Wall Street Journal's reporting on the Daniels story. Meanwhile, the former president's surrogates in the front row appear to be wide awake and following along with the testimony. The jurors, for their part, seem interested. Several jurors have been taking intense notes during this exchange. I wonder if any of the Trump surrogates will have their mind changed after listening to Michael Cohen lay everything out line by line, beat by beat, completely cleanly. To wrap things up, Donald Trump's behavior in the courtroom is really reminding me of when I used to get detentions in high school for being late too many times or whatever. And when I'm sitting in that detention classroom, I remember always wanting to rebel even further, to act on my juvenile urges. And I think Donald Trump is currently acting on those same juvenile urges. We know he loves to rebel against authority, and I think he is so opposed to hearing Michael Cohen's testimony that he's performatively sitting there like a rebel and resting his eyes with his head tilted. I mean, he could very well be sleeping. I know he slept a lot in this courtroom, but I think he's purposefully doing this to show that he really doesn't care. Or he just stayed up too late on Truth Social sending off tweets about Judge Merchan's daughter. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, hit that subscribe button, comment a blue heart, most importantly, have a great Tuesday.